So here's a scary situation. After years of wondering why the price of gold and silver isn't higher than it is, it suddenly takes off. And you go to cash out because that's what you do when things get more valuable. But the shop has closed down and nobody wants your overpriced metals. Now you should have already known this because that one random guy in the comments of that video that one time told us. Guess the joke's on us. If gold goes to $5,000, who will buy your gold? This comes up a lot. Sometimes it comes up as a legitimate question, and sometimes it's just a random hater. Their implication being, you won't be able to sell if the price shoots up. Now the haters don't know, so we're going to ignore them for now. Maybe we'll come back to them in the end. But to get at that legitimate question of selling on a big run, I spoke to two of my local dealers and JM Bullion last week just to see how they would handle large-scale buybacks. I also asked them about buying on price runs. And what I found out, well, it might surprise you. And let me give you a little bit of background. Now, I know that I can easily sell 3 or 4 ounces of gold to any of my local shops. That's why I was asking about those larger buys. Now, I would call ahead for those 3 or 4 ounces, but even if I were to just show up, I will get more than spot for Eagles or Buffaloes and at least spot for really anything else that I have. Mostly what I have is at the top of the list of what a dealer would want to buy. Now I have a few exceptions. I'm just going to ignore those for now. My dealers will pay a few percentage points over spot for Eagles and Buffaloes. They'll pay spot for Maple Leafs, for Krugerrands, Philharmonics, probably Britannias and Kangaroos, and any of my series coins. I wouldn't have any trouble selling anything that I have locally. I just wouldn't be able to get that 10 to 50% over spot for some of my special coins, some of the more expensive coins, but I knew that going in. Now, JM Bullion, they will take anything I have, and they're going to give me more for that special stuff, the stuff that my local dealers might not really care about. Any of my high relief proof coins are going to be good examples. My local shops, they might pay a little bit more, but it all depends on demand at the time. The online dealers, they have a wider market, so they're more willing to pay a little bit more for some of that numismatic value, but again, probably not the best place to sell some of those specific coins. What I wanted to know though is what it would take if I wanted to sell 10 ounces of gold at a time, 20 ounces of gold at a time, and then 10 to 20 ounces of gold at a time during a price spike. Now this gets back to that question or maybe that doubt of whether you could actually sell gold to realize a profit if the price got into that $5,000 territory. Now let's just start by ignoring the $5,000 number for now because I think that's distracting. I know that I'm not the only person out there who sold gold or sold 3 or 4 ounces, sold 10 or 20 ounces. There are channels out there who've made videos where they call random dealers. There's one in particular who I think he asks if the dealers will buy 3 American Gold Eagles and 3 Canadian Maple Leafs. I think that was the case. I hope so. His title or his thumbnail says something like shocking results. And it's been a while since I watched the videos, but if I remember right, he had a few lowball offers, but he ended up with the dealer offering spot for those Maples and a percent or two above for those Eagles. So not really shocking in a final case like that. Actually, that's pretty good. And I've always found that dealers will typically offer you more if you know them, or even if you just simply stop in. So those shops that he called might even do better face to face. Now, like I said, I've made some of those larger sales in the past. I didn't have any trouble whatsoever, so that wasn't a hypothetical case, but it has been a few years. I wanted to get an updated view on the matter, so I started out just asking what each dealer would pay for a 1 ounce American Gold Eagle or a 1 ounce Gold Buffalo. One of them said 2% over spot. 2 of them said 2.5% over. So far, so good. All of them offered slightly over spot for Canadian Maple Leafs or Krugs. Now that part is always pretty easy. They're just giving a number. So I put them on the spot. I asked them if they'd buy 10 ounces today, and both said yes. 2% over spot in one case, 2.5% in the other. Now, I know the dealer offering 2.5% over spot pretty well. So I asked him if he would buy 40 ounces today, and he said, yeah, he'd take care of me. I left it at 10 with the other dealer that I don't really know. Didn't want to waste his time, but he said yes, he'd give me 2% over spot if I came in today, and he'd do it in cash if I gave him enough lead time. Now, I didn't press for specifics on that part. JM Bullion said they'd buy 40 ounces in American Eagles or Buffaloes anytime, just say when. And the reason I'm using JM Bullion, I got into this a little bit in a prior video. JM Bullion just paid a little bit more than APMEX. They've also been a sponsor on the channel, but that's nothing that would affect what I'm saying here. So I asked if they'd take more in a single transaction, more than that 40 ounces, and they said, of course. That's a quote. So the surprise here seems to be how easy it is to sell. Except that can change a little bit depending on what you're buying. We're not going to go too deep into that, but remember, I've been talking about Eagles, Buffaloes, Maples, and Krugs. With those last two, with the Maples and the Krugs, I asked about 10 to 20 ounces. I was intentionally staying below that 1099B level. It kicks in at 25 ounces. All three of those dealers said the same thing. Maples, Krugs, Eagles, Buffaloes, no problem. And then there's a little bit of a fall off depending on who you're talking about. You're going to be able to sell a few of just about anything. A dealer's going to come up with the price. They're buying. So still no big surprises yet. So what if gold shot up to that $5,000 an ounce, that number that I just said we're going to ignore for a minute because I don't know where it comes from. It just keeps getting thrown around though. Personally, I don't find it to be a serious short-term number, so I didn't get into this with the buying rep at JM Bullion. I didn't get into that with the dealer that I don't know very well. I just asked them if spot price affects their buying, giving that example of a big price run. Both confirmed what I've heard and what I've seen in the past. Climbing prices actually increase buyer demand. More people come in to buy when those prices go up. So a price run doesn't really scare a big dealer. A small dealer, they might have to deal with cash flow. That did come up, but I'm going to get into that specifically in a minute. I just realized that I forgot about the quarter ounce gold coins. I did bring those up. Right now, JM Bullion pays about 8.5% over spot for quarter ounce American gold Eagles. Now, I was asking about that, both because that's what I have and also because I know the premiums on quarter ounce gold Eagles have just gone crazy lately. I also asked about quarter ounce Canadian Maple Leafs, JM Bullion, they pay 2%. Getting back to my local dealers, one of them said they pay the same for fractional. They mean the same as those 1 ounce coins. So 2% over for AGEs or Buffaloes, spot for CMLs. It's not a great deal. The others said they'd give 7 or 8% for Eagles because they're hot, and a bit over for others, depending. Again, I didn't really push that. But the story on fractional is a little bit different than what we're seeing on the 1 ounce, since you're paying so much more for the fractional on the front end, and you're not getting quite as much out on the back. It's pretty safe to say that fractional holds premium if you're selling to a private buyer. But my local shops, they've never really been great about them. I don't know why. And JM Bullion is a pretty good example of a company that moves a lot of gold, and even they aren't great on buyback premium. It's just something to keep in mind. I still like the idea of fractional, but the buy to sell spread, it's going to sting you a little bit more if you're trying to move them quickly. Now, if gold goes to $5,000 an ounce, I think you'd be fine. The most interesting part of the conversation with any of them is one that I had with my local dealer, the one that I know well. This was a deeper conversation about buying on a big price run, and what he said is that it gets crazy when the prices spike. That part's not a surprise. I've been in his shop when it does. Customers are there scrambling on both sides. Some are selling, some are buying, and when it's exceptionally busy like that, he says he likes to deal with what the buyers want. Eagles, Buffaloes, Maples, Krugs. I think there are probably a few more in there. Phil's, Britannias, who knows, Kangaroos. You just have to remember that this is a local shop, so those preferences change depending on the region you're in. That's what he likes. I think that's a pretty good reminder to ask your local shops what's popular. So in his case, he's always buying those Eagles, Buffaloes, Maples, Krugs. He said he's always buying them and he doesn't have to think about them. He just knows that they'll sell. Now, if somebody comes in with some kind of coin he's not familiar with, he mentioned some British coins that he thought looked really nice, but he said sometimes he'll pass on them because people buy what they know. And if you've ever looked at the Google reviews on your local shop, I'm sure you've seen some bad ones in there. And I have to assume that at least some of those are from people who showed up at a busy time with an obscure coin. Karen got mad because he didn't want to take the risk of that Maid Marian coin sitting on his shelf for months. Who knows? I asked him, though, if he ever handled gold like he does with the random silver bin, just sell it for spot. He said no, and then he said, well, maybe sometime. So kind of non-committal. But I think the takeaway here is that you'll probably be able to sell anything. You just might not like the price, and you might get bumped back in line if you have that Maid Marian coin. So one more thing to keep in mind, your weird coins might not sell on that quick spike. So the local shops and the online shop, they didn't give me a whole lot that was a surprise. Actually, it made me feel a little bit better. I think the real question here gets at a general skepticism of gold as a speculative investment. Like gold can't do what Bitcoin did, but if it does, you won't be able to get your profit out. And really, I don't think about that a whole lot. I'm not holding my breath waiting for gold to double or triple overnight. It just doesn't do that. But a long-term march up to $5,000, really that's no different than $2,000 today. The price is what it is. People buy for the same reasons. I've heard that from the local shops, and I've always seen that in person. If the world's population agrees that gold is worth $5,000, well, that's what people pay. Maybe it means people buy less. I doubt it. It typically means people buy more, but your ability to sell is not going to change if it's a slow climb. Fast climb, if we're talking about an unexpected currency crisis like some kind of rapid hyperinflation event, I don't think anyone knows what would happen at the local coin shop or what would happen in the world in general. But it wouldn't make sense to run in and sell all the metals you have, converting it into the currency that's currently going up in flames. So it's really not something to spend a whole lot of mind share on. The more realistic consideration is what happens in the global recession where buyers just aren't buying. And the question there of skyrocketing metal prices in a period where nobody is buying is a little bit of an oxymoron because supply and demand affects price. So the only case where gold would shoot to $5,000 an ounce at a time when nobody was buying, again, is a case where the dollar is spinning out of control. And I don't mean a little bit. I mean like third world country style hyperinflation. And if things go that way, it's not about pulling your profits out of gold. It's about day-to-day survival. In that extremely unlikely case, having gold and silver is a tactical advantage, but it isn't going to make things normal for you. It's just one more option that you have. Now, I think that if anyone is asking that question with this type of situation in mind, the negative spin that gets put on that question is probably based. Who will buy that gold at $5,000 an ounce? Well, it depends. We might have people willing to buy gold for $5,000 if those dollars are worth less. And if those dollars are continuing to fall while gold is climbing relative to that fall, well, people might want to buy it. But if it's just all-out pandemonium, like fire and brimstone, the implication is pretty clear. Gold and silver are not going to save you in a wide-scale economic fallout type of apocalypse. Can't eat that gold. But my take on that view, and it's a view that comes up more than it should, really is who cares? There are 99 reasons to buy gold, and only one is that possible tactical advantage that you might get in a made-up apocalypse. And I'm okay with that. I've got 98 other reasons. And I think that covers it. We covered the realistic side of the question, got some dealers to weigh in, and we looked at the unlikely side of things too, the one where we're just all screwed. But the people asking that kind of question probably aren't looking for an actual answer. They're just going through life as a downer and they're trying to suck you in with them. But don't fall for it. Hopefully they'll come out of it. Let us know what you think though. What would get you to sell for profit? And do you have a plan if that time ever hit? Let us know. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit the like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.